This
What's up?
meeting is being
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Spoken Truth. I go by the name of Danny.
I'm Chaz.
I'm tuned.
And I know it's been a long time, but today we're going to wrap up the regular season. We're going to preview some of the playing games that's happening right now, later tonight and tomorrow. And we're going to be diving into some of those playoff matchups that's going to be happening this coming weekend. But first, we want to wrap up the regular season by first discussing the Mavericks and the debacle of a situation that is. Tunde, I'm sure you've heard everything coming out of that camp, as far as them sitting, some of their players and not playing Luka the entirety of the game, and still had a playoff opportunity on the line. What is your thoughts on that entire situation with the Mavericks?
Well, Luka would have sat too if it wasn't Slovenia night at American Airlines or at the Mavs Arena. True story, by the way. That's why he played a quarter. They had a large contingent travel from Slovenia. They made it a whole thing. And otherwise, they would have sat him too. I mean, I'm fine with it. They weren't going to make the playoffs. They more than likely. Even if they had won that game, it wouldn't have. Even if they had won that game, it wasn't really up to them because they needed Oklahoma City to lose too, and I get it. I honestly like the reason we're even having this discussion is because of what Jason Kidd said in the press conference. It's not about the actual basketball. Portland gave up like 3 weeks ago and started resting MFs, and people haven't batted an eye about that. And they're not even the only team. Utah started doing it too. They pulled out of the race too. This draft class is one of, if not the best draft classes I've ever seen in my lifetime. And we probably, obviously, everybody knows the big prize is Victor Wembanyama, but like we run like 20 deep in this draft class with legit NBA rotation players. And if you're picking at 19, you can expect to get like a rotation player, and that is not normal or the case. This class is deep as hell. You have guys like Cam Whitmore, who is a legit star, a guy who reminds me a lot of Anthony Edwards, and he might go like 8th. Like, imagine if you could get Anthony Edwards in a draft at 8. Anthony Edwards went at 1 in his class. That's not accidental. So that's like this. If you were gonna try to be bad, this would be the year. This would be the time to be bad. And ultimately, with the moves they made at the deadline, it was robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like we talked about before. It's not Kyrie Irving's fault, but they had no wings on the roster no starting caliber wings on the roster, and absolutely no rim protection. So, I mean, they ended up being a really bad defensive team over the back half of the season, the worst in the NBA, actually. There was a time, I want to say it was about the 12 games after the trade for Kyrie Irving, after he had played 12 games, where they were allowing opponents to shoot 80% at the rim, which is, I don't have to tell you guys that was last in the league during that stretch by a wide margin, but it was. I have no problems with them deciding, like, let's just pull the plug on this. And the other thing is that they need to land in the lottery to keep their draft pick anyway. So needed to land in the top 10 to keep their draft pick anyway. So it's important for them to try to improve those odds from that perspective too.
Chas?
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand why they did it, but I feel like there's no way around it that it's a bad look. I mean, you trade for Kyrie Irving, like 6 weeks ago, and you're like a 5 or 6 seed at the time, and then getting ready for the playoffs, and you're out of them. And you have one of the top 10 players in the league, probably top 5 at this point. Not to mention another guy like Kyrie Irving. And there's a lot of issues on that roster, Tunde, like you mentioned. But there's no way that they should be missing the play in. And I don't really have an issue with them doing it because, like you said, Tunde, there are a lot of teams that decide that they don't want to compete, especially when we get, to April, late March. But the Mavericks didn't make a decisive decision. And I feel like that was an issue with it too. Like they played Kyrie and Luka against the Kings 2 nights before and won that game. And it looked like they were going to try and make a push for it. And then, less than 48 hours later, they're throwing up the white flag. So it seems like if you're going to make that decision, you would have made it before that Kings game, probably even a week before that. I mean, we've known the entire year that if they weren't in the top 10, then they were going to have to give up that pick. So it just seemed like it was a late decision. It didn't seem like everybody in the organization was on the same page. And that's not a good sign going forward. And not only do I feel like they thought that they had a team that was going to be good enough to get into the play-in, I feel like they were selling, people that were our Mavericks fans were selling you on the fact that they could make another run this year, and we're not even going to see them play. So, I mean, I feel like there's no way around it that it was a huge disappointment.
I tend to agree more with you, Chaz. I think it was a bad look for the league. Just from the point of that, you mentioned that there were teams that were already tanking. So the point of where my frustration lies is that, well, you have two top 15, 20 players in a game. There's no reason that you should be tanking in order to try to get a top 5 pick. And I know that it's in order to get that, in order to get your pick has to be in the top 10. But from a standpoint of the teams that were tanking, I believe that the Mavs believed really when they made that Kyrie Irving trade that they were going to potentially make a run for it at a deep run in the playoffs. And it didn't end up being that way because the defense was so lackluster. And that's putting it nice, to be honest. But this is the style that the Mavericks play. Like, they play small ball. They don't like to play with a big. They like to play with people that are maybe 6'7", 6'6", and under. Luka is probably one of the tallest players on their team. And I believe Luka's we'll give him 6'6", 6'5", something like that. 6'6". Yeah. So they like to play that style of basketball. And when you don't have the personnel to play like that, that becomes a problem because they're not a good shooting team. They're a high volume shooting team from three, and they're not a good 3-point shooting team. So the question to me is that do Kyrie stay, past this season? Because Kyrie has the option of leaving after, the season is completely over. So do we stay and believe that this Mavericks team can legit compete for a title? Where does Mark Cuban go from there if Kyrie Irving decides to leave? There's a lot of questions that this Maverick team will have. And the only constant that we know word of mouth is that Luka is happy there. That's the only thing that we know. We don't. Everything else is up in the air. If I'm Kyrie Irving, why you don't do an exit interview? Like you're creating more drama for yourself. All you got to do is say, the season didn't turn out how we wanted to. We wanted to try to potentially make a run and deeper into the playoffs. We wanted to get in the playoffs. We had a rough patch, but I'm willing and I'm ready to continue to compete if they have me, or if, they would like to keep me, whatever the case may be. It just makes it worse on a Kyrie that he continues to act this immature and this childish. Well, he don't have to be. So this whole situation turns into a question mark. Well, what is Kyrie really thinking? Does Kyrie really want to stay with the Mavericks? Do you think Luka and himself can work long term? Two ball-dominant guards, can they work? He made it, to me, he made it worse on himself, not being open for questions to reporters. And now a lot of things are speculating about that, about him, about the organization. And a lot of that stuff could have been, I'm not saying put to bed, but a lot of that stuff could have been on hold until a decision was actually made during the offseason.
I mean, I think So first of all, you guys know how much I love Luka. That being said, like I do think for the team, I think for the Dallas Mavericks going forward, no matter who's there, like I think he's got to commit himself to getting in. I think he's got to fully commit himself to getting in the best shape he can. Um, he's got to give just a bit. He's just got to play with more effort and more force on the defensive end. And I think he's just got to come off the ball a little bit more, like 5-10% more. The heliocentric stuff, I think, is just a bit tough. That being said, I mean, I think Luka would pairs great next to a shot making guard, but there's gonna have to be 3-and-D wings and some rim protection on the roster. And it's not that they don't have bigs, and it's not that they don't have they don't want to have shot blocking and rebounding from their bigs, and that they don't want to have size. They signed JaVale McGee this offseason for that exact reason. They were hoping he was going to address that problem. That didn't really work out. And now they're left with that same problem. We've heard the Mavs GM now for the last 2 years, Nico Harrison, we've heard him now say the same thing at both of his exit interviews, where he feels like that, that they really need, they need better interior defense / rim protection, and they need, to be a better rebounding team. And that's going to come from drafting a big who does those things, or acquiring a big who does those things.
It makes no sense
I don't
acquiring
think
it if they don't use it.
Say that again?
It makes no sense acquiring the talent and you don't use it.
No, they're going to. That's kind of the idea. But I mean, or I would imagine they're going to. I would just say I don't think the reason this roster didn't work is because Luka and Kyrie can't play together. It has a lot more to do with the other holes in the roster. They're like, this is not like this roster currently. This is not a good roster. Losing Dorian Finney-Smith sucked for them. This is their best perimeter defender. And they really struggle to guard at the point of attack. And you can't struggle to guard on the perimeter at the point of attack and not have rim protection behind that. Some of their offseason acquisitions, a lot of people wondered why Christian Wood didn't play more. And Christian Wood is a really poor rim protector and an overall bad defender. With all of the other issues, the offensive benefits that you get, that you can't really play Christian Wood 30 minutes when, everybody is getting beat off the dribble and blown by. So they've just got to balance the roster out a bit more. It comes with getting 3-and-D guys and guys who can operate without the ball in their hands offensively and who can guard multiple positions on the wing. And then obviously, like, the need for a big, not named Dwight Powell, who can protect the rim and rebound at a high level is glaring. So.
Yeah, Danny, you mentioned a second ago that Luka seems to be happy for now, but we don't really know, where that's going forward. Like, how long does that last? Because you go through another season like this, and I feel like we could be, pretty close to Luka asking for his way out.
I mean, you were in a Western Conference Finals last year, and you're not in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
So that's a significant drop off from one year to the next.
Yeah.
I never, and you guys know, we've been doing this podcast for 2 years now. I've never been a fan of the way that the Dallas Mavericks play basketball. Like, I've never thought it translated to winning a championship because they don't have it's like they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like, they're playing a style of basketball that's not suited for them. They want to play up and down. They want to jack up threes. It reminds me of the 2015 Houston Rockets, where they like to play up and down tempo. They like to shoot a lot of threes. The difference is they had James Harden, who was better than 40% from the three, and they have Luka he's a high volume shooter that has a poor 3-point percentage. it doesn't correlate to success when you're playing that style of basketball. That style of basketball is tailored to teams that have the mindset that they're willing to play like that. And no matter what, they're going to go all in on that small ball lineup. The Warriors, you know how many times the Warriors gonna have big man after big man after big man, and they didn't play them because that's not their style of ball. That's not their style of ball. Like they play small ball. Draymond and Looney been the tallest motherfuckers out there, and they play that way. This inconsistency with the Dallas Mavericks. Oh, do we want to play big? Oh, do we want to play up or down now? Like, how do you want to play? So I
The
don't
Warriors
think
play bigs though. Like
the Warriors,
like
their biggest big is Looney.
But he's a center.
right. But if we're talking about
Looney at best Looney at best on any other team would be a forward probably.
In today's NBA, he's a 5 just because he's 6'9".
I mean, he's a stretch 5, but that reminds me of how the Warriors used to play back then. When Draymond was playing the 5, he was a stretch 5 that can pull the defenders out to the 3-point line and set up Steph for pick and rolls, and they can do whatever they want to do on the perimeter, set screens and everything. That's the ideal. That's the ideal to me of how the Dallas Mavericks will like to play, because that's how they consistently shown to me how they want to play over the last 2 years. The problem is they don't have the personnel for it. They don't have the talent to. I'm not saying they don't have the talent, like they don't have good players. I'm saying they don't have the personnel to play that style of basketball. And if you want to play that style of basketball, you need to get people that play that style of basketball.
So my counter to that would be that we saw them play that last year and it worked quite well.
And they lost. I would say they had
game. Say that again.
They lost to the Warriors playing the same style of basketball that the Warriors play. That's why they didn't beat them. Other than, even if you're saying the Warriors are a more talented team, they still were trying to play the same style of basketball. That's why it didn't work.
I don't think the Mavericks and the Warriors play the same style of basketball at all, though.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I believe that's the style of basketball they're trying to play. They're trying to copy that brand of basketball of playing small guards or playing people that are 6'7" and 6'6" and under, and playing at a fast, rapid pace, or playing up and down tempo style of basketball. Like to shoot a lot of threes. The problem is I don't think they have the personnel to do that. Over the last 2 years, that's how they've shown me they want to play. They want to take threes. They want to get the ball up. They want to penetrate. They want to kick it out. They want to shoot threes. They want to keep it going back and forth, back and forth. They don't want to slow the pace down.
The thing is, the Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks don't really play alike offensively. Like the Warriors are.
That's not my point.
The Warriors aren't a heliocentric offense. Like Maxi Kleber's 6'11". Dwight Powell is about the same size. It's not that they don't play bigs. Like they have bigs on the roster. They really miss point of attack defense, like Dorian Finney-Smith. And so trading him away was obviously something they had to do in order to get Kyrie Irving, but it's something that really ended up, again, it just by solving one problem and adding, which is that they needed another ball handler, they just deepened another problem that kind of already existed on the roster, and then they made it worse. But like they need to add, they need to add more perimeter defense. But like when you look at the way the Warriors want to play basketball, it's a lot of ball movement, motion, high post splits, and stuff like that. And the Dallas Mavericks aren't really doing a lot of that. It's like you said, a lot more driving, kick, shoot threes. I understand the point that you're trying to make. I understand the point that you're trying to make about the Warriors and spacing, but I mean, if we look at these last 8 years with the Warriors, you mentioned the small ball lineup, but the small ball lineups, like the death lineup as we, all came to know it, wasn't the like that lineup wasn't playing, 48 minutes a night. That lineup was playing like 16 to 20 minutes a night, which kind of ties back into my other point that you need to have real bigs on the roster. So they probably just need somebody better than Dwight Powell. But you need real bigs on your roster for, to make any situation work. Asking Draymond Green to play full time as a 5 is incredibly taxing and a very difficult thing for you to ask of him, which is why it hasn't been what the Warriors done. You know, they've had different fives. It's been Kevon Looney. At some point, it was Zaza Pachulia. You know, it's been different guys.
I think my only counter to that would be is that I'm not talking about from the standpoint of the Warriors, how they pass the ball and how they set screens and whatever case may be. From my standpoint, I'm talking about wanting to move, try to get the pace faster, wanting to shoot threes. I believe that's what the Mavericks want to do. That's what I've seen the last 2 years. I'm not saying from complete 100% standpoint that they're trying to play small ball with small ball. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the way that they want to play is because they lack defense and because they haven't really been, they wasn't a good defensive team this year, and they were of course they were better last year, but I saw the same thing last year where they, Luka bring the ball up, typically plays one-on-one. He does his thing, whatever case may be. He shoots a three or he go in the paint, whatever case may be. But they're continuing to move the ball. It's not at the rate of the Warriors. I think we're accustomed to seeing so much ball movement with the Warriors that anytime we say that this team all moved the ball well, they're like, well, they're not on the level of the Warriors. The Warriors just continuously is constant movement of the ball. And I'm not saying that's what the Mavericks do, but I'm saying stylistically, from wanting to shoot perimeter shots, wanting to shoot a high value number of threes to get back and be able to play some type of defense, that's what I've seen from the Mavericks. And typically obviously they're thrown in the paint, if someone open, they make the right play. But typically what I've seen from them is they want to shoot a lot of threes. And we could say that's almost every NBA team. I mean, the 3-point shot goes up every single year. So we could say that's every single team. But stylistically, I believe that the Mavericks want to shoot a lot of threes, whether they're contested or not.
Yeah, I agree with your point on that. I think that they do resemble the Warriors in the fact that they do like to play relatively small, and they obviously do like to focus on 3-point, shooting, but it is drastically different, like how you both mentioned that the Warriors like to move the ball a lot while, the Mavericks really are Luka pick and roll damn near every time down, unless something else opens up. I really like your comparison to the James Harden led Rockets teams. And I do think that you can win a championship playing that style of way, but pretty much everything needs to be perfect. That Rockets team was a championship contending team because they had guys like PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, and the Mavericks don't have guys like that right now. Like you need really high level
Trevor
role
Ariza.
that can defend, that can hit threes. Capella can defend the rim. So I think it's possible to win like that, but they need to find different players. And Finney Smith was a guy like that, and he was probably the only guy on the roster that really fit that bill. And they had to get rid of him. So I don't know. Like if we could go back, would you guys have made that deal for Kyrie, or do you think that you wouldn't have? Because I feel like if they never made that deal, they'd probably be in the play-in right now.
Personally, I wouldn't have made it, but I get why they did.
He said wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
I would not. I would not have done that deal.
Okay.
But I understand why they did. I honestly think a lot of it has to do with being able to say, "Hey, look, we made a move. We're trying to win. See, Luka." But yeah, I wouldn't have made that deal. From a roster construction standpoint, it made no sense, and it never did. I mean, we talked about it here. It was not like surprising to see. It was not surprising to see everything play out the way it did.
To go back quickly on your point, Chaz, how you was talking about that style. I don't think that style is tailored to win in this day and age of the NBA. I think if you asked me that a couple of years ago, the answer would have been yes, of course. But I don't think that style is made to win in today's NBA. But
just to be clear, what style are we talking about? I just want to make sure we're understanding you here.
He's talking about the way that the Houston Rockets played in 2015. It's tailored to win in this style of NBA, like today's NBA. I think it's hard to win that way now. It's because there's so many good 3-point shooters in this league that if you're playing a team that can shoot very well, like if you're playing a team like Milwaukee and you don't have no answer for Giannis and you have players that can shoot from perimeter as well, it's going to be hard to beat a team like Milwaukee. If you play in Boston, where they have 3-point shooters that can shoot the ball, and you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they have a full, complete, all-around team, it's going to be hard to beat teams like that playing that style of basketball. I think that style is come and gone. Like, I don't think you can win that way. To tell you the truth, the Rockets should have beat the Warriors in that year. I mean, they were prime and they had the team to do it because of, I believe, that they didn't change the way that they were playing. They stayed to their root. They shot a lot of threes and it ended up costing them a trip to the finals, in my opinion. So I don't think that today's NBA team can win a championship playing that style. I think that's over.
I think you can, but I think it's
I mean,
harder to win that way.
It's definitely harder to win that way, yeah. And I'm saying playing teams now that these like players coming in this league and players that's in this league now, like the way that they train and the way that they're so athletic, the way that they can shoot, even if they can't shoot, the freakish ability that they have, playing someone like Giannis or playing Kevin Durant or playing LeBron at age 30, what is he, 37, 38? I don't think you can win that way with playing that style of basketball. I think eventually it catch up to you. And I'm not even a proponent of outscoring a team. I think the Mavericks, one of their biggest thing is like, we're going to outscore you, or a team like the Sacramento Kings, we're going to outscore you. Well, you still have to play defense. And if you're lacking defense, like Sacramento Kings do, like the Dallas Mavericks do, it's going to catch up to you. I don't think you can win like that. You can't play one style of basketball on very good on one side of the ball, but then completely is below average on the other side and expect to win. And
I
that's
mean,
the situation with the Mavericks.
to be clear about that Houston Rockets team from 2017, or sorry, from 2018 that we're talking about, Chris Paul not being available for the last two games of that series has a lot to do with why they didn't end up finishing the job and losing that series. I just feel like we should mention that. We would be leaving out like tons of context if we did.
I mean, I still think
it mattered. They were up 3-2 in the series.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I'm saying like I still don't think it would have been a done deal for Houston to win that series. Like
it wouldn't have been.
No. I think a lot of I'm not saying us, but I think a lot of people like to make what ifs. What if this happened? What if? Well, no, it didn't happen. So we can presume and we can say what ifs all we want, but that doesn't mean that it would have been the case. And I don't know if Houston would have won. I would have given them a very, very good shot at winning. But I'm not going to sit here and definitively say, okay, they would have won, you know. And I don't think
I'm not going to definitively say anything either. But we can look at how that series played out and how that series was playing out.
Mm-hmm.
It's
it looked like
they
Houston
lost
had their number.
You said what?
It looked like Houston had their number.
Yeah, we watched 5 games. We watched Houston win 3 of them. We watched Houston's second best player get hurt, and then they end up only really having one ball handler, and that changes things. I'm not even disagreeing with you about like shot diversity and like maybe needing to have maybe having a few more answers would be nice, but like that team is. Like, if we're being realistic, they're probably in the finals if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt. And then, the narrative around that style of play looks very different.
And also, the narrative around James Harden changes too. And I was going to say that too. Last word, Chas.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, go back to the, kind of Luka being happy thing. Like, it didn't really seem like he was, towards the last 6 weeks or so of the season. He had that quote about not having fun anymore. He was, complaining all season long. I think he was tied for second with 17 technicals. So it definitely seems like it's kind of affecting, his energy and his performance a little bit. and just the way, he feels about his team and his teammates and the entire franchise. So, do you guys think that Luka is going to be on that team, let's say, 2 years from now?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I think
And
he's
for
still got. I think he's signed through 2027, if I'm correct. But a player like of his stature could pretty much ask out anytime he wanted, if that's what he chose.
yeah, I think for the sake of time, I'm going to give a short yes. Then we could revisit it later, of course.
Yeah,
But I think he do stay. Um, I
I
think he
think
do
you're
sign.
probably right, but it's definitely something we got to gauge because
Absolutely.
it's trending downward after last season. How everything that they accomplished.
Mhm.
This is not where the franchise wanted to go this season.
Absolutely. Tunde?
I'll give a short answer and I'll go no. But
No? Okay. All right, guys. That's a wrap for the Mavericks. We want to get into some award giveaways. We want to give away some awards for this season.
Yeah, let me
Should we
start this
start with?
recording over.